Slight delay when switching modes in Vim using Tmux or screen. Switching to and from insert mode in Vim is no longer instantaneous since I use Tmux. After pressing ESC in insert mode, it takes a noticeable amount of time to actually get out of insert mode. After pressing ESC and any other key afterwards, the switch is immediate, and the command for the key pressed after ESC is executed. Any idea what might cause this? The Vim configuration is not the problem, as the delay does not occur when I run Vim outside Tmux, so this is probably related to Tmux somehow. I use gnome-terminal BTW. Also worth noting, it seems I cannot define key bindings in Tmux for ESC. My plan was to bind ESC to. Alas, it seems binding anything to ESC for Tmux does not work. The same problem occurs in screen as well.
After plowing through the man pages, it turns out Tmux has an option for this. The following in /.tmux.conf fixes the delay problem. You have to restart your Tmux server or reload your config for this to take effect. To do this, issue source file /.tmux.conf from the Tmux prompt. As pointed out by Jonathan Wheeler, this URL, setting an escape time of 0 is a bad idea, but rather, set it to a low enough value such that you are not bothered by the delay.
I had a different but similar issue that I was trying to solve when I found this page, so I'll post that here in case it's helpful to anyone else who is in search of this answer and finds this page in the same way. Problem: 6 mode in Bash has a delay when switching from insert mode to command mode. Solution: in your tilde.imptrick file, add set keysec timeout n where n is some low value greater than 0. N defaults to 500 milliseconds, which is what causes the delay. See documentation here. Also, if you want to be able to tell which mode you're in, check out Dylan Calley's fork of Bash.
TLDR. Do not use escape time 0, but rather set it to a low value. In /.tmux.conf. Finish by either reloading your Tmux config or restarting your Tmux server. In your CLI, run either Tmux source file /.tmux.conf or Tmux kill server, Tmux. Detailed explanation. After spending several days over the last couple of months tracking down a very annoying, non-deterministic and seemingly random issue while remotely connected to a Tmux server via a term 2 March 4, 20, ZSH 5.8.1, SSH 8.9 P1, ZSH 5.8.1, Tmux 3.3a, I would highly recommend not setting escape time to 0, as suggested by others here, and even by Tmux Sensible, which links to this very question at the time of my post, but rather setting escape time to a lower value of something like 10 or 50. From the default of 500. Why? I finally discovered the solution in the GitHub issue, Tmux 3.3 leaks text into shell. Escape time 0 prevents Tmux from recognizing escape sequences that are fragmented across read/packet boundaries. You should raise that to a more reasonable value such as 100 milliseconds, which should be enough time for most cases while still being quick enough that it shouldn't cause human-scale interaction issues. He is using a completely different terminal than me, Western versus a term 2, yet is experiencing a very similar issue of a combined CSI control sequence introducer and DCS device control string escape sequence, specifically /033 095 0C /033P term 23.4.20 /033 / leaking into the shell in response to the CSI escape sequences. CSI is greater than C, AK /033 is greater than C, and CSI is greater than Q, AK /033 is greater than Q. Which, at least for me, seem to always occur in sequence immediately after one another. After some time, this would cause a random paste to occur in my Vim buffer, followed by term 23.4.20 sick being prepended to the pasted text. Further detail to help others searching for this solution. The combined CSI and DCS sequence /033 095 0C /033P term 23.4.20 /033 / causes the following in Vim /033 095 0C /033 doesn't do much, P pastes whatever is in Vim's unnamed /default register, tabs the line to the right. I enters insert mode, term 23.4.20 is inserted into the buffer, \033 escapes back out of insert mode, and the final \\/ basically does nothing. I've observed that this happens more often when I'm on the road, and especially when using an unreliable and slow mobile connection. This now makes perfect sense since packet latency is greater under these conditions, and since I was using a escape time 0. TLDR, don't use escape time 0, it exists for a good reason. Give it a low reasonable value like 5, 50, or 100 that will still work well when connected remotely. Adjust as needed to find the right balance. If the value is too high, it'll interfere with human scale interactions. If the value is too low, you may experience escape sequence artifacts and bugs. Edit, this problem and solution is also cited in this Microsoft WSL issue on GitHub, which similarly links back to this question. Edit number 2, I've also learned that the issues I described above can, and perhaps more likely, be due to tty_query_timeout in tmux/tty.c not being set high enough, but this is beyond the scope of this question. It remains true that you shouldn't use escape time 0 for the reasons mentioned above.
As the title mentions screen, here is the solution to fix the behavior of escape key within gnu-screen. Taken from here. Add to .screen config file.
It sounds like you are using a mapping that starts with escape. When you press the escape, Vim has to wait to see if the next key is the one in the mapping. If it is not, it can immediately continue. The Vim configuration can be terminal dependent, so the fact that it does not happen outside of Tmux does not mean much. Vim can query the $term environment variable and choose different configuration depending on its value. Since gnome-terminal uses a fake xterm as the value of the $term variable, and Tmux uses screen, I would look through all your Vim configuration files for settings that are only used as the $term variable is equal to screen. My guess is that some Vim config file on your system sets mappings for handling of arrow keys. Those start with the escape character when the terminal is screen. You can test it by temporarily changing the $term variable in Tmux before starting Vim. If your shell is bash, call Vim as in Tmux and see if the problem persists. You should not use that as a fix, though, since there may be differences between the terminal capabilities of Tmux and xterm, and you may run into some problems.
If you want to support the channel, please consider liking and subscribing.